we wanted to depict some of the violence in a very particular way, which is like a poor man's bullet time, the Matrix technique.
Right.
So we were able to get a load of these cameras for free and kind of like stack them, and then use this technique, which you can see a couple of times in the film, to surround an event and to kind of be able to kind of flip around the different sides of it. And sort of, my dream is trying to, you're here watching it, and my dream is always to get you to go, to flip inside it and then back out again. And we haven't got that technology yet, but one day where you just, poof, like astral project inside what you're enjoying.
Very excited to have you here today, Danny. I wanted to start off by talking about what made you be like, now is the time to return to the world of 28 Days Later.
Well, we tried. It's weird. The original film, 28 Days Later, it's one of those that has a bit of staying power.
Yeah.
You kind of get asked every couple of years, somebody will ask you to go in a Q&A. And I'd always try and turn up for Q&As because it's lovely. But you turn up and the cinema would be heaving with people, and it'd be kind of quite an intense experience still. And this went on and on and on. So Alex Garland, the writer, and I, we talk about, should we do another one, blah, 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 like that. And we tried. Alex wrote a kind of very kind of preliminary script for one idea, but it was very much what people would expect. It was weaponizing the virus, a sort of traditional idea for a sequel kind of thing, like a military or a corporation weaponize the virus. And neither of us it didn't get any traction between us. It was good, and it would be a very good, Alex doesn't write bad scripts, it's like good, but it didn't really felt like it was worth it somehow. And then he went away, and I think as a result of that, he began to think about a much bigger idea that withdrew from Europe. So at the end of 28 weeks later, you see the virus arriving in Paris, and that's the traditional route. You would think, it'll expand out. And we sort of counterintuitively decided to do the opposite. We'd withdraw and imagine that the EU or the UN had forced the virus back into the UK because it was very easy landscape to blockade and quarantine. And we thought that's the setting, and it would put a restriction on us, which should open the idea out, and that's what it did. And he wrote this epic story, which is across 3 films. We've shot 2 of the films, and we've got a third, which we're still looking to finance. And it's about a family or families, but it's a much bigger idea than if we'd gone large scale, across Europe and into Russia or whatever people were imagining that we might do with it. So it was wonderful actually to kind of suddenly focus on the homeland again, which of course, one of the weird things about the first film is that it was entirely set in England, didn't have any American actors in it, and that's the case again with this. It's populated with British actors entirely, other than one guy who turns up, which I won't tell you about. It's well worth looking forward to that bit later on, who turns up from somewhere else.
That's exciting. What I thought was so interesting is that you started off with 28 Days Later. It's a film about a lone guy who, within the first act, we learn doesn't have anyone anymore. His parents are gone, and it's just him. But by the end of the film, he, with these 2 other survivors, has kind of created a family. And then with this film, you've gone back to that idea by beginning with a family who is in a village that, considering everything, is thriving.
Yes.
But there's clearly still conflicts and still battles to be fought. Can you tell us a little bit about what about this family made you excited to pursue a trilogy?
Yeah. It's like most families, it's got its problems that are inbuilt into it, and the outcome of that is that the young lad who's the centre of the film, in a way, he's taken out by his father to blood him, really, to give him a rites of passage into what he's expected to do in this new community, which is to defend the community. The men, it's very kind of gender specific. They've retrenched back into a kind of 50s worldview, which is the women stay at home, the men go out and defend and hunt and gather. It's literally like that straightforward. The boy doesn't quite behave like you might expect him to. He doesn't return in the end, and something happens with his mum, which is quite emotionally engaging for a horror film. It's quite a surprise. I mean, that was one of the things about the first film, is that we had Brendan Gleeson in it, who was people were very moved by his death when he tried to protect his daughter and stuff like that. And it's got an element of that within it as well, which is we've kind of ploughed an emotional terrain through the use of the family. I remember saying to Alex, when we got the first 2 scripts, I remember saying, as we were working on them, I said, what would you, because it's often good, what would you define it as, what would you say this script's about? He said the first script's about the nature of family, and they said the second film's about the nature of evil. And they do blend into one another for various reasons. But it's really about how that family survives and how other families survive, because the virus is also a participant. It's not just something that you can see is causing things. It's actually an active character in a way. It too wants to survive, and there is some mutation has gone on as it seeks to survive. Because I think the authorities imagined that you'd blockade, isolate, quarantine this island and it would kill itself off. It's a very virulent virus, and like Ebola, that it may burn itself out very quickly. It doesn't. Many die, but many adapt. And so you get a progression and a survival method there, which reflects then on how other people survive, how the normal survivors that we'd expect, the community on Holy Island that you mentioned, of this family, how they survive, but how others survive as well on the mainland, which you come across at one point in the movie.
Yeah, it's interesting because in the first act of the film, you also introduce the idea that the virus has evolved into creating different kinds of infected, like than we had seen in the first 2 movies. And I'm curious about how that evolved, and also, have you guys been influenced by TV shows that have become huge since the first movie, like Walking Dead or The Last of Us?
I know it's gone. I mean, I think that was one of the reasons that we instinctively
People
went the
like
other
it.
way. We thought, no, we're not going to expand it out because everybody else has sort of done that. Let's kind of concentrate on the homeland really and do it like that. I think the evolution of the infected was to do with a very practical thing, which is that the inhabitation of rage burns up literally so many calories. I mean, it did this with the actors as well. It's quite exhausting playing these parts, and you wouldn't be able to keep it up for very long, and they burn themselves out quite quickly. So the virus, I think, this is what we decided. It's fanciful, but interested. Decided there's 2 ways of dealing with that. Is that they hunt. Because in order to, if you're burning up that many calories, you need to replace them. So they're beginning to hunt, as our predecessors did. You have to hunt and be, so that there's that. There's another group of them that you will have seen who gather on the ground, who reduce energy burnage and actually just gather kind of worms and bugs and grubs around the ground like that and become kind of return to the ground in a way. There's another one that you haven't really properly met yet who goes the other way, and where the virus acts like a steroid almost on the effect. And he is a leader. And the pack, the hunters, sort of work for him in a way. It's very crude and very simplistic way of defining it, but that's the influence that you're seeing in the evolution of this. And as far as we can tell, nature will always find a way. You imagine that you hope that something will be able to do that with it. It won't. Right. It'll return. So
that's interesting, because there's also, in the beginning, when the male father figure is taking his son out to go hunting for the first time to do this bloodletting situation, or blooding is how you put it. You do a thing where you start cutting to archival footage of like children, like boys specifically in uniforms, and soldiers and archers. And it made me think, especially because the footage is in black and white, so it contrasts very sharply to the contemporary story you're telling, that we are kind of trapped into these histories. So talking about the idea of like, even the zombies are you okay with the word zombies? I know they're infected people. I know it's not technically zombies.
Yeah, we call them infected. But
okay.
Everybody calls them what they want, really.
But like, it's interesting. I hadn't thought about that yeah, even the infected are falling into these patterns. Is the idea that history is inherently going to like repeat itself, is that something that speaks to you? Is that something that scares you?
It's interesting, isn't it? This is one of the interesting questions we thought. We imagine that we're evolving the whole time. We're getting basically better. There are setbacks, as we all know, but basically we're getting better all the time. Little by little by little, life seems to improve. We've got more respect. We kind of got more compassion. We grow forward, or we try to. Is that just based on technology, though? If you stop technology, and I don't just mean withdraw it, I mean abrupt stop, like a 28 days later apocalypse, boom, that stops it. What happens to people? And we decided that this community, they've not continued evolutionary wise. They've looked back, and they've looked back to a romanticized past.
To what feels safe.
Yeah, and in Britain, it's post-war. It's that feeling of, in the 50s, we suffered, but we got through it. We all pulled together. Everybody knew their roles, and we all did and they've regressed. They've gone back to that. So in terms of their costume and the way they look and the way they train the boys and girls, they separate the boys and girls. They teach the boys to be fighters and hunters like that. And the girls work the land or work the home at home. And it feels very, it feels very nostalgic. And hence we cut in some footage of that, and there's even a bit of Henry V in it, and Lawrence Olivier in Henry V with the bows and arrows, and that idea of, and it's a very ancient idea in England of the bow and arrow man and defending the land and all that kind of stuff. And Henry V is a very big film about St. Crispin's Day for England, and so all that is knitted into the film through this boots soundtrack, through this Rudyard Kipling poem. And because again, I want people to read that very much in a way. And the decision that the boy makes, he goes through something in the second half of the film that elevates him in my mind, and he's able to turn his back on that, and he's saying, no, I'm not going to do what my father wants me to do. And it's kind of like it's the hope that teenagers give you, which I believe in. As a big music fan, as a big movie fan, I believe in the kind of that independence that is forged by, and there's lots of problems with it, but it's forged by youth, which says, no, I'm not going to do what you tell me to do. I'm going to try and find my own way through this. And that's sort of how it emerges in the end. That's the principles behind it.
I want to circle back to Boots, because for an American audience, I don't think most of us were familiar with that song until the trailer hit.
Boom, 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 moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the wall.
And it's so haunting in the context, and you use it in the film too. So for those unfamiliar with Boots, can you tell us a little bit about its history?
Oh my God. Well, I've no idea whether this is true, but we were told that the person who found it, so it's produced by one of the trailer guys at Sony, and we were told this story that and you've got to take this with a pinch of salt because it may well not be true. I've no idea. I haven't followed it up because I think it sounds amazing. So we were told that he knew it because a girlfriend of his had another boyfriend who had trained as a Marine. And that in the Marines, they use it as a torture training technique. You get locked in a room with it on, non-stop, deafening volume. And it's torture training technique to get you used to that kind of torture.
So to kind of harden yourself.
Yeah, because it is kind of one of those things that just pushes you back in your seat like this, like, oh, and then you can imagine it going on and on and on for hours and hours and hours. Now, whether that's true, I don't know, but it's a great story. You think, yeah, cool. So we were looking for a piece of music, a piece of archival music for this sequence that we were developing to show the way they had kind of begun to look back to romanticize the past, and that had a wonderful appeal for us as well. So
sure.
Yeah.
Now I want to go to what you were talking about youth and hope, because as I mentioned before we started recording, I've rewatched a bunch of your films in preparation for talking with you today, and I literally went, I think it was the same day, I went Shallow Grave, Trainspotting, Sunshine. It was a hell of a day. And like, these are all films I had seen before, but watching them one after another, there's some very dark aspects of it, but once I got some distance from it, I realized that you make some films that are incredibly dark, like those. Like Trainspotting is very joyful too, but there's a lot of darkness within it.
Sure.
And then there's like Millions and Slumdog Millionaire and A Life Less Ordinary and like But I realized there's a unifying thing that in the end of all these movies, even if they are dark, even if it is sunshine, there is a sense of hope, because it's almost like, and I think it's always, the protagonist ultimately gets what they want, even if there's a high cost for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. I believe in that, and I believe in redemption, and I believe your one's job, if you're lucky enough to make these films, is you are allowed to take your audience anywhere, which is one of the amazing things about it. You can literally take them anywhere, and you can, and if you can get the right actors who can make people believe, you can go anywhere. But when you go there, you have to offer some kind of redemption ultimately. And I think that's part and parcel of it. It's built in, and I think it's part of the function of art. So I went to see this dance group 2 weekends ago in London called La Horde, and they did this dance thing with Ballet Rambert, modern dance, and it was about going out clubbing, and it was just amazing. And I watched it, and it kind of, you thought, if they could bottle this, everybody should have this pill. Everybody should have it, because it just made you feel, it just put your faith back in life. It doesn't matter what you're surrounded with, and we know what life is like in terms of the stuff that goes on and the shit that's thrown at people and the cost of living. And then you see a piece of art, and it's dance, it's not spoken, it's not preaching about anything, it's just telling you what we're capable of, and that you can transcend the stuff out there and find a way, really. Anyway, it was wonderful. I thought, we have a National Health Service which is free to everyone, and I thought this dance show should be available on the NHS for everybody to access at any point, you know?
Yeah. No, I love that idea. The idea of I mean, I agree that I think that there's something about art that can heal us in a way.
Yes.
That, you know, part and parcel to the healthcare, all for healthcare. But I do love the idea of that there are things that can heal us. So there's an example of that for you where you were in a dark point in your life and there was like a piece of art that kind of helped you process that or go through it, or
I think you get it. You get it all the time. It's kind of like comes to you. Like when I saw Honora, I thought, I just felt so uplifted, and I went back to his other film because I'd never seen Florida Project. I was just and it was just those kids. I was like, they just kind of heal you, like you say. It's a good word for it, yeah. So it has that quality, and I think that's what we use it for. It's under threat, always under threat for all sorts of reasons, whatever. But it'll always be there because we need it. It's part of us. It literally is part of us, and I think more government should acknowledge it and should support it more, because the benefits are clearly tangible and ongoing, you know.
Totally. Is that something that's going to come to play in the trilogy? Is there going to be an element of the characters finding art as a means of thriving or surviving? I
don't know whether it'll be art in a specified way, but when I said to him, what's the third film about then? He said the first one's about the nature of family, the second one's about the nature of evil, and funnily enough, he said the third one's about the nature of redemption. So there you go. So there will be some hope offered, I think.
It's exciting. I want to talk to you about a movie of yours that is my personal favorite, which is A Life Less Ordinary.
Hey!
I deeply love it. And I realize, this is my tie-in, it's 28 years since that came out this October. Yeah, isn't that crazy?
So you know the story about that? And this is true, apparently. It's used as an example of a saying in the movie industry to cheer people up when they have a disaster. You know, when you release a film and it's a disaster, it doesn't work. There's a rule that says that if you have a success, there is a huge success. There's always one territory where it doesn't work, where the film doesn't work. Okay, in the hundreds of territories there are around the world. And conversely, if you have a flop, and Life Less Ordinary was quite a big flop, there's always a territory where it's a big hit. And it was true. It was #1 in Belgium for 3 weeks. So there you go.
Belgium knew what's up. Because I watched that movie when I was young and I loved it, and I rewatched it. And I rewatched it this weekend and learned I know every line. Like I was like sitting there with like saying the lines ahead of time, especially when Delroy Lindo like does the thing where he's like, with a broken arm, and then he does this little with a broken arm, and he's so angry. Like I remember all of it, and like it didn't occur to me at the time. I was like a teenager. It didn't occur to me to like pay attention to how it did or whatever. So like when you were coming in, I looked it up and I was astonished, one, that it was not a huge hit, because I loved it, and everybody I knew also, you know, watched it in part because I guess I was being like, watch this thing, we're gonna watch this. But also just, it's such a joyful movie that it's crazy to me it didn't catch on. It's like this screwball comedy that is also about angels who are also like guardian angels / hitmen. Like, how is that not exciting people?
It's also, I think it was because because obviously you're always trying to think why. And I think it was because it was at a time there were a lot of romantic comedies. It was the era of romantic comedies, and we deliberately wanted to do a quite perverse romantic comedy. And I think that just didn't gel with people in a large scale, or they couldn't sell it. They didn't know how to sell it, or it looked wrong when they tried to sell it. I don't know, but I watched it with the writer about 3 years ago because he lives in Bath in Britain. And they have a film festival there, and they put it on as a special screening to kind of in his honour, really. So I went down to Bath to watch it with him, and we sat at the back watching it together. And I couldn't predict it. I'd forgotten, what because normally you're a slave, you know exactly the order everything comes in. And I'd forgotten, and it was really refreshing. And you thought, oh, this is a really good bit of writing. It's lovely, and the performances are great. Ewan and Cameron are fantastic in it, and Delroy, and it's amazing in it, and Holly Hunter, So it was lovely. Yeah, it was really good. Oh, I'm really glad you like that. Yeah,
it's just it delights me. But like, it's interesting because it's like looking at you have such an incredible filmography. I'm curious, like, because you're like one moment you're like, I'm gonna do this very dark movie about post-apocalyptic world, and now I'm gonna do a movie about a guy who wins $1 million. And like, I'm curious for you, like, how do you get drawn to these projects? Like, what is the thing that you feel like sparks for you?
It's usually the script. I mean, unless you're devising something or like adapting it from a book, or you've got an idea that will do something like that. It's usually the script that just makes you go, you read it and you just imagine yourself in it. You kind of, your job as a director is to deliver the script in many respects. It's also to investigate it and kind of open it and make and you try to make it flower. And so I've always imagined that I've always done that I find that much easier to do if I do something contrary to what I've done before. And that's what I always quote. But I remember being interviewed by this French journalist, and she said they can be quite tough, the French, especially about movies. They kind of, and they're rightly, it's one of their national pastimes. She said, your films are all the same. I said, excuse me? I don't think so. I think there's quite variation in genre. She said, basically, they're all the same. She said, and you've just said it as well, actually. They're basically about a protagonist who overcomes incredible odds, but does. And she said, that's all the movies. And I thought, is it? And I thought, yeah, and it probably is. It's probably true as well. But I love that, and it's true. You do, as they do say, you do tend to make the same film again and again. You just disguise it better, or try to anyway, or not.
Sure. Well, I'm curious, like, on making this movie, there's so many fascinating things going on within the movie, but I also know that you used a bunch of different kinds of technology to film it, including an iPhone. Can you tell me about that?
Well, the world has moved on so much since we made the first film, and we used for very specific, kind of almost story reasons. At one point, we were going to have a scene in the first film where a character picked up a discarded domestic video camera that was left on the ground, along with all the cash and everything that's been left behind, and is now all useless. And it still worked. The battery was still live, and you could see evidence of the horrors or something touching or something like that. So we thought, we'll make the film on those cameras for all sorts of reasons. It allowed us to do the opening sequence in a clever way, so that we could. But technology has moved on, and we thought we've got to move on, and yet we want to respect that instinct, which is to use the ordinary in some way. So it feels like it's something that's come from the place that the story is about. And of course, we've all got the phones now. So we decided to use them. They're lightweight. They now record at 4K, which is, when you make your own videos, you have to put a special setting in to make it 4K, because otherwise your cloud storage would be just ginormous. But
sure. For
every little video that you made. But they recorded that, but they allowed us to visit places, remote places in the UK, with a very light footprint. So we used a lot of cameras. We didn't just use the iPhones. We used some special. There's a red sequence in it that's used this special Panasonic camera, the EU123, I think it's called, and we used drones, which use like 6K cameras, and we unified everything with a format, with a 276, which is a widescreen format, which you can do now with all these cameras, and it's a beautiful format. It's not very much used. It's only been used in a handful of films, weirdly, over the years. But recently, Sinners used it, and the creator used it. Oppenheimer used it. Hateful Eight is shot in it, and I love the way Tarantino uses widescreen. He's wonderful. The way he edits as well. He edits in a very different way than I edit. He lets you select as a watcher where you're watching, because you have to select on a widescreen. And I like that unease it creates when you watch this. It allows nature to be portrayed, but it's also, the danger could be anywhere within that broad scope. So yeah, it was exciting, and it allowed us to use these. We wanted to depict some of the violence in a very particular way, which is like a poor man's bullet time, the Matrix technique.
Right.
So we were able to get a load of these cameras for free and kind of like stack them, and then use this technique, which you see a couple of times in the film, to surround an event and to kind of be able to kind of flip around the different sides of it. And sort of, my dream is trying to, you're here watching it, and my dream is always to get you to flip inside it and then back out again. And we haven't got that technology yet, but one day where you just poof, like astral project inside what you're enjoying.
Right.
So for you, it'd be Life Less Ordinary. You'd be like, whoa, and here's Delroy.
I'd be in that bar doing karaoke.
Yeah, you're doing karaoke in the bar. So anyway, but it's a kind of little way of doing that. It's a little technical way of doing that. Yeah.
That's very cool. I've seen the Instagram post where you show the rig, and I've seen one of the scenes you're talking about, and it is very affecting, because it's like, that's part of that. What I like about your films is, like, no matter what the topic is, no matter what the story is, there's this like frenetic energy that is like alternately like exciting, but also sometimes, like in this case, like very scary, because it feels like, for better or for worse, you can't get out of it.
Yeah.
And there's such an energy to that I thought was so exciting.
Yes. The what was it? Frank Capra said that there are no. What did he say? He said it's something like there are no rules in filmmaking. The only sin, and it's a cardinal sin, is dullness.
I mean,
I'm kind of like I'm of that persuasion. I love it vibrating in front of you. I mean, if you come to the cinema, if you make that effort, you spend that money, whatever your agenda is, whether it's a girl or a boy or whatever the agenda is, or your mates or whatever, I want you to feel like, whoa, okay, that is my money's worth right there. That you have given me a vision of something, and the films I love. When I think about the ones I love, they do take you places, and the screen vibrates at times, literally in front of you. I don't want it be passive, and it's just passing along in front of you. Yeah. I want it to kind of scream at you sometimes, really, and it's an energy you can use in different ways. Like you say, it can be used in a scary way or a joyful way. That's my philosophy.
Well, you used phones to film your film. I'm curious what you think about people bringing their phones and filming in theaters. Because as we know, it's very big right now.
Is it?
Yeah. A lot of people posted a lot of Sinners online very quickly.
Did they? Yeah.
Yeah. It was all over TikTok.
Yeah. Well, obviously, I'm meant to toe the corporate line here. But I have to say, if you have come to the cinema, God bless you. That's all I'll say. You know, they come to the cinema, God bless you. It's like, and I think like somebody sent me something this morning, and somebody had put out something of some of the footage of 28 years later with a different song on it, and I thought, fair enough. It's like somebody's just done something different with it, and people express themselves, and they're not a threat to my mind. I mean, Sony will disagree, and I'll get in trouble for saying this, but I don't regard that as a threat. It's just like, it's part of our community. You know, we love cinema. People who do this just love movies, you know, and they want to share them and they want to use them and everything like that. So anyway, so that's mine.
Well, conversely, the Q&A I went to last
night.
Sorry,
Sony. I'm going to get in trouble about that. Robin will be on to me about that later. Sorry about that. Anyway.
Well, conversely, the Q&A I went to last night, you were saying about how there are scenes in this film that are so uniquely violent and so graphic that you can't release them in trailers. So
Yes, you can't. No, because you can't get the stuff on YouTube. And we wanted to illustrate this. The one shot there is that happens in a train that shows that an array of cameras in its best way. It's like it's got two elements in it that you're not allowed to show on YouTube. So that is, and I'm not just saying this to try and get you in the cinema, but you have to go to the cinema to see that, and you'll know the shot when you see it because it's like, whoa.
Yeah. I mean, also as somebody who watches a lot of trailers for part of my job, like I like the idea that there are exciting moments in the movie that like we aren't being shown, but also we can't be shown.
Yeah. But they were also, what was great about this guy's trailer, the trailer he did for 28, is that they didn't. You know, American trailers usually tell the whole story, blah, 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 right to the beginning, so you know what you're getting, and that just doesn't do that at all. It's kind of, there's a lot that you haven't seen and that's waiting for you, yeah. And really surprising elements in a way as well. Like Jodie Comer's stuff is very surprising. Very beautiful, some of that, I think. She's an extraordinary actress, and we're very lucky, the actors we got in it. Ralph Fiennes is obviously a master at it now, and it's interesting, there is a little bit of a Lawrence Olivier cut in earlier in the film, and if you're looking for a new Lawrence Olivier, you wouldn't go far wrong. Ralph Fiennes should play him anyway, and Aaron Taylor-Johnson, who's an incredible action actor, you know, and he really takes it seriously, the job. And it was wonderful watching the kid who's in it learn, because he's with Aaron and he's trying to learn how to act. He wants to see how an actor acts, and he's watching Aaron prepare, and Aaron goes through these techniques as he gets ready for a scene, for these action scenes, and it's like, I love all that, you know. And he'd be shouting in this studio we were in, he'd go shouting, incoming, incoming, like this, and then I'd hear Alfie in another part of the studio going, incoming, incoming, as he tried to copy him. Anyway, yeah, you'll see what I mean when you see the film. He does sort of copy his father, understandably, you know.
Sure,
yeah.
I'm really excited. I'm really stoked for us to see it. Is there anything else you want to tell our audience before we head out today?
I was just thinking about Gene Hackman.
Go on.
You know, because we lost him, and what an amazing actor he was. And it was a movie that nobody's seen, I don't think, called Eureka. I just wanted to recommend Eureka. So there's a great British filmmaker who passed away now, sadly, called Nick Rogue. And he made a very famous film called Don't Look Now, which is very famous for a very famous, very beautiful sex scene in it, and an amazing picture of grief and a kind of redemption in Venice. But he made a film with Gene Hackman called Eureka, and it's Gene Hackman's greatest performance. And he dies halfway. So it's a weird film, like your chief, you know, and Nick Rowe did break the rules all the time. And he dies halfway. And so the film declines with his death, understandably. And everybody always says there's another rule about filmmaking that says nobody remembers you if you die in a film. Once you die, that's it. Everybody forgets you immediately. So you should always wait until, don't die in movies. That's what they always say to movie actors. Anyway, he does in this one. But the first half of the film is one of the greatest things I've ever seen, and people should see it. This man, Gene Hackman, discovers liquid gold in Alaska, and he becomes the richest, the man who has everything. He does not want for anything. It's about that, really. It's a wonderful film.
I'm going to check it out. That's in my blind spot. I'm adding it to my letterbox.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, letterbox. There you go.
Well, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure to have you.
Oh, is that it?
That's it.
Oh, my God, look. Yeah, time's up. Thank you very much.
Boyle's enthusiasm for movies is, dare I say it, infectious. I loved hearing him talk about what brought him back to the franchise, but obviously, I really loved how he looked back on A Life Less Ordinary.
Yeah, it was a real treat to talk to him about it, because that's a rom-com I love so much. Apparently, critics and audiences didn't. And I'll say this, watch A Life Less Ordinary. The charisma, the soundtrack, the story, the hope, it's still a marvel. And if you need a pick-me-up after the purposefully intense 28 years later, I can't think of a better double feature.
It's a dream of a double feature. I mean, I wore my A Life Less Ordinary VHS out. That cast was wild. Ewan McGregor, Cameron Diaz, Holly Hunter, The Tooch. One of my favorite movies of the 90s, without a doubt.
And everyone's hot in it. Like, everyone is hot. They recognize that all of those people are rock stars, and everybody is treated like a rock star in it.
Yeah, it's like peak everyone in the 90s. It's nuts.
Yeah.
I also really loved hearing Danny Boyle talk about using iPhones to shoot his movie and empowering audiences to use their phones to make their own films. Like, I'm very into that. Just go out and make your own movies sort of mentality.
Yeah, he's got a real lust for life attitude, which, makes sense. It reflects his own films. And I do want to bring up that after we turned off our cameras, we talked a little bit more with him about phones in theaters. And he said something interesting, which was a bit of an addendum, that while he doesn't mind people filming his films to make their own things, he doesn't like the idea of disrupting other people in the theater space by using your phone.
Yeah, like, no matter how low you think your brightness is.
It's a flashlight in a dark room. It's distracting. Like, Mashable has covered this before. Our entertainment reporter, Belen Edwards, wrote a really great piece about when Oppenheimer, everyone kept pulling out their phones at Oppenheimer.
Absolutely. A movie theater is a place to be transported into the world of the film. Like, last time I was at a movie theater, I was seeing Mission Impossible Final Reckoning, and it's the middle of the epic submarine scene. And all of a sudden, I'm taken out of it by the guy in front of me watching a video of Tom Cruise's stunts from other Mission Impossibles. So, like, instead of enjoying the cinematic feat that is the submarine scene, I'm now thrust into a Matrix-esque rabbit hole considering how unbelievably meta this whole moment is and my existence, which is, I guess, my normal vicious cycle. So please, I implore you, at least for 28 years later, just allow yourselves to, like, enjoy the film, put your phone away, and just enjoy the movie.
Yeah, that whole thing makes me like Muppet Kermit mad, where my mouth just starts to, like, yeah.
This has been Mashable Say More. Subscribe anywhere you listen to podcasts, watch our videos on Mashable.com or YouTube, and leave us comments on any of these platforms to tell us what you think of the show and who you might want to see us talk to next, and where you come in on the phones and theaters debate.
And tune in next week when we welcome Phineas and Ferb creators Dan Povenmire and Jeff Swampy Marsh. Season 5 is now streaming on Disney+, and they'll tell you all about why they came back, their favorite songs from the original series, and what their return to the tri-state area meant to them.
Until then, see you next time on the Say More Couch.